Welcome to Recap Kun. The protagonist of the tale is a mafia gangster named Mr. Kim. Despite his rough exterior, Mr. Kim is actually a very good-hearted man who aspires to finish his education. One night, as he makes his way home, he comes upon a schoolchild attempting to leap off the bridge. Mr. Kim advances on him without any delay in order to stop him. His name is Songy. He leaps off the bridge when he sees a truck approaching. Mr. Kim tries to save him but realizes the truck is heading their way. Fortunately, the truck driver makes a sharp turn. Songy falls onto Mr. Kim. But Mr. Kim is tragically struck by another truck and instantly passes away. Still, when Mr. Kim awakens in the hospital the following morning, he discovers that he is inside Songy's body. However, he believes he is dreaming. Unaware of the reality, he goes to meet with his gangster's friend after hearing his voice from outside. According to Dong-soo and Jang-chul, Kim's friends, Songy is the reason behind Kim's demise. But as things get worse, he gets confused and realizes this is not a dream. Then, in an attempt to convince him that Mr. Kim is no longer alive, Jang-chul shows him his funeral and informs him that their boss gave his life in response to him. Unable to understand the situation, he becomes enraged. He says he is Mr. Kim, their boss, so they tell him to leave right away. Nevertheless, he quickly goes to the mortuary to put back his spirit in his own body. He makes an unsuccessful attempt to reintroduce his spirit into his body, which depresses him. After that, he returns to the same location and repeats the incident. However, it didn't go as he thought it would. A few days later, he wakes up in a hospital, eager to see Kim's body. However, the nurse tells him that Kim has already been cremated, so there is no need to go see him. When he realizes there is nothing he can do to return to his regular life, he considers continuing to live as Songy. However, he is perplexed because no one has ever visited him at the hospital. He starts to think he must be an orphan. Suddenly a strange woman appears there. Her name is Mikyung. She is the mistress of his father, and she seems to hate Songy for some reasons. Using facial recognition, he unlocks Songy's tablet and discovers his diary open. Reading it, he discovers that Songy was being bullied by Jaemin and his friends at school to the point where he made the decision to end his life. Everything began when Songy and Jaemin were enrolled in the same class. Jaemin misrepresented him as a creep and circulated rumors about him stalking Sekyung throughout the school while he was simply admiring the popular student because he wanted to be friends with him. He became the target of increased bullying from Jaemin and his friends, and everyone at school started to avoid him. Unable to comprehend why Jaemin was acting in this way towards him, he began to feel hopeless and considered suicide. Kim is enraged by how poorly everyone has treated him, and he swears to exact revenge and make things right until Songy returns to his body. When he gets back to Songy's house, at first he meets with his housemaid, and then he finds his mother, who is very inebriated, sleeping on the sofa. The maid informs him that his mother has increased the consumption of alcohol and Miss Mikyung never forgets to refill the alcohol stock in an attempt to make her life worse. Additionally, he finds out that Songy's father owns the third biggest construction company, but there are unresolved issues within the family and Songy is their illegitimate son. In order to avoid being recognized as an easy target, Kim considers getting a new haircut and getting fully makeover before entering the school. Then he runs into Sekyung, the popular guy who Songy wanted to be friends with. But Sekyung gets surprised when Songy doesn't recognize him. Nevertheless, he gives him a general knowledge book to read. So Songy asks Sekyung for additional assistance right away because he needs to catch up on a lot of things. As they converse more, Sekyung begins to believe that he has mistaken him for Songy since he is unrecognizable and speaks differently than a typical high school student. Once his wounds have healed completely, he attempts to gain some muscle and sets up a makeshift gym in his room. When he returns to his school the following day, Jaemin recognizes him, but is perplexed by his abrupt personality shift. He boldly asks the other female students where his seat is since he does not know where it is. They do not recognize him but tell him that seats are not formally announced yet, so he takes a seat by the corner window. However, as they continue to stare at him, a few of them begin to recognize him. The teacher and Sekyung then arrive, and when Sekyung sees Songy, the man he met the other day in his class, he is once more taken aback. When the teacher calls out his real name, everyone gets shocked to realize that he is the bullied stalker of the school, Song-yi. Following the teacher's departure, Jaemin gets up and approaches Song-yi to bully him. To his surprise, though, Song-yi is no longer afraid of him. They took him outside and started to bully him because they were irritated by his abrupt change in demeanor. When he retaliated, one of the bigger guys grabbed him from behind, and Jaemin kicked him in the face as he fell to the ground. After all that training, Kim had not expected this result, but he still has a long way to go. Upon awakening and he spots Sekyung there, Sekyung offers to head to the nurse's office, reasoning that returning to class in this state will only exacerbate his situation. In lieu of the nurse, Sekyung begins tending to his wounds. Furthermore, he asks his reasons to not recognize him at the shopping mall earlier. Initially, he is perplexed, but upon noticing his name tag and remembering the notes from Song-yi's diary, he begins to identify him as Sekyung, the popular student Song-yi wanted to be friends with. Sekyung's claim to be his best friend gets him perplexed because, in Song-yi's diary, they never became friends. Nevertheless, Kim claims to have lost his memories, but when he extends his hand to continue their friendship, Sekyung starts to laugh at him. He says that they were never friends, but Song-yi once blackmailed him to be his friend. Sekyung suspects that the guy sitting in front of him is not Song-yi but someone else instead, who is pretending to be him for some reason. Kim has no answer to that and feels trapped. Kim tries to convince Sekyung that he is the real Song-yi, but the major accident that happened to him has changed his personality completely, and he has forgotten about his past life experiences completely. But Sekyung's suspicions are still intact. Upon returning back to the classroom, Sekyung advises him to change his seat to the front. When he sits with the girls and sees them working on their notebooks, he asks for their assistance to help them buy the stationery items. But girls are weirded out by him, but they couldn't say no to him. When the girls see him offering a ride back in his luxurious car, they quickly get inside, and then to further make them more happy he takes them to a restaurant. With their help, he buys all the necessary stationery items. But when they notice that despite filling their notebook details already, Song-yi hasn't mentioned the AS time, but Kim doesn't even know what it means. Thus, Sekyung shows up there and inquires about its meaning since he is aware that he is unaware of it. Fortunately, before he is discovered, one of the girls revealed that it is actually study time. He began to observe Song-yi after that day, and his misgivings increased when he noticed that he was acting differently from how he had in the past. When he sees his father's mistress at his school, he quickly goes up to her and drags her in an empty alley. She's the person who raised Song-yi and made what he was in his past life. Kim warns her to stay away from his life and let him do as he pleases from now on. Later, when they are sitting together, Sekyung grows curious about him and asks him for his real name, shocking him. Despite this, he continues to insist that he is the real Song-yi. Subsequently, a student abruptly tells Song-yi to go to the counseling room right away. The teacher asks for his reasons to not mention his goals after school since it's very important to have target in life. But Kim isn't sure what Song-yi really wanted to do in life, and to get into a good university, he must get good grades. Nevertheless, he starts to study when upon coming to a difficult question, he asks Sekyung to solve the question for him. Without asking any questions, Sekyung solves it for Song-yi. However, he still suspects that he is someone else, pretending to be Song-yi. In order to prepare himself for what lies ahead, Kim begins strengthening his body and enrolling in boxing classes. When he was having a relaxing time, he happened to come across two thugs. He got pissed at them and taught them a lesson. However, the gangsters got confused when Song-yi claimed to be the top gangster Kim Dok pal. Afterwards, we get to know that Jaemin and his friends also appeared to join their gang. And Jaemin notices Song-yi there. Upon arriving back home, he gets to meet with Sekyung unexpectedly. Kim is confused to see him there, and Sekyung says that he wants to tutor him since the exams are near. However, when his mother collapses on the ground, he asks him to go into his room and wait for him. Seeing the opportunity, Sekyung starts searching around the place for clues to know the whereabouts of the real Song-yi, but he gets interrupted by Kim. He is tired of Sekyung keeps digging up things, so he asks him to leave so he can focus on his studies. However, Sekyung is frustrated since he believes he has done something to the real Song-yi and stole his life. After growing weary, Kim tries to tell Sekyung about Song-yi's bridge jump, but before he can say anything more, his mother screams, so he goes to see how she is doing. She is upset with him for throwing away all the alcohol bottles and is experiencing an alcohol craving. After making an effort to soothe her, he leads her into her bedroom. Before leaving the house, Sekyung retrieves a strand of Songi's mother's hair for a possible DNA test. Sekyung appears extremely afraid when he gets home, acting as though he does not get along well with his family. Upon closer inspection, we discover that his father treats him harshly, and that he is not allowed to spend free time with his friends. Kim is cornered by the bullies the following day, and they try to remind him of how cruelly they used to treat him to break his confidence. However, this just makes him angry, so he breaks his phone and throws it away. And then he also challenges Jaemin for a 1-to-1 fight. When Jaemin attempts to knock him out with his first blow, Kim strikes back, causing him to bleed, and then he kicks him, which prompts everyone to attack him. Nevertheless, Kim has sufficiently trained his body this time to deliver a brutal beating and a lifelong lesson to these bullies. Before he could give him 1 or 2 more punches, the teacher and Sekyung noticed them. She quickly heads over to the scene and scolds Jaemin for starting a fight with Songi. The instructor gave him advice to contact his parents and the school violence committee, but when Kim runs into the loser bullies again, he tries to talk them out of bullying other kids. But when they do not listen to him, he makes a promise to beat them up every time they act funny at school. The next day, the bullies unexpectedly show up to attend the class, and when the teacher leaves, Songi calls Jaemin like a boss, tells him to be punctual and study hard, which surprises the other classmates. Having taken an oath, Songi begins interrupting them whenever he witnesses them mistreating other students. Then the other students start talking about how Songi gave Jaemin, the bully at school, a good beating. In the interim, Sekyung is prepared to send a hair strand for DNA testing in order to authenticate the identity of the phony Songi. After growing weary of Songi, Mikyung plans to take over the OK Construction Company by getting rid of both Songi and his alcoholic mother, and asks Dongsu for help. So Dongsu assigns his gang members to get rid of Songi and his mother. Meanwhile, Kim is thinking about Sekyung. Since he doesn't know much about him, he asks Jaemin to accompany him. He asks how his relationship was with Sekyung since he doesn't remember anything. According to him, Songi was just a loser stalker. And for Sekyung, since he belongs to a rich family and his father is an elite prosecutor, so he puts so much pressure on Sekyung to represent him. However, today is test day, and after his terrible failure, Kim requests that Sekyung study with him. Suddenly, Sekyung's basketball friends arrive there, and upon noticing him with Songi, his stalker, they start to insult him. Sekyung didn't like that and he refused to go with them. Songi is surprised that Sekyung stood up for him. Nevertheless, he tells Sekyung that he will be a better friend than them if he teaches him and accepts him as a friend. When Songi meets with them again in the bathroom, after they attempt to humiliate him by calling him a stalker, Songi takes the basketball away from them and challenges them to a one-on-one game because he was a basketball player in his previous life. Upon learning of their match, Sekyung immediately goes to the playground. It is there that he gets a call from the doctors informing him that he is the real Songi because his mother's DNA matches with his DNA. In the meantime, Songi uses his unparalleled skill to win the basketball match, surprising everyone there. Kim then confronts everyone for being a jerk to Songi, accusing him of stalking Sekyung without any strong evidence. When Sekyung agrees to study with him, Kim promises him to do whatever he wants as a gratitude. So as promised, Sekyung starts to have study sessions with him. When they go to have a small break, Sekyung tries to feed him the pineapple cake knowing that real Songi is extremely allergic to it. But he could not jeopardize his life merely to satisfy his curiosity and stopped him. However, Songi started eating something else that also had pineapple in it, and all of a sudden he started to choke on it and landed in hospital. Despite all of this evidence, Sekyung is still unable to believe that he is the real Songi. He explains to him. Sekyung is unable to sleep at night knowing he might be the reason for real Songi's disappearance. Seeing him in misery, he promises Sekyung to help bring back the real Songi so that he can ask for his forgiveness. However, until then he requests his assistance. And Sekyung promises to him until he meets with the real Songi. Furthermore, he is unaware that a gang is out to kidnap his mother. When Jang Chul sees Jaemin, who keeps asking to join their gang, Dongsu meets with him, and makes him sit in his kidnapping van. Upon arriving at his house, he witnesses his mother's kidnapping and quickly moves forward to save her from the kidnappers. Sekyung also lunges forward to save his mother from the kidnapper. The driver tells Jaemin to close the door so that they can escape, but he is too scared and quickly runs away from there. The gangster pulls out a knife, but before they can harm anyone, the police show up, and in this way, they were able to save Samgi's mother. However, when the detectives arrive to investigate the kidnapping case, Kim lies about it and says that a few random thugs parked their van in front of their house and were drinking, so they got into a fight. Sekyung finds it hard to understand why Kim cancelled the police report, but he explains that he does not want the police to look into Songyi's family history because that could lead to trouble, and he promises to deal with those gangsters in his own way. When Sekyung gets home hurt, his father starts to have doubts about him. Sekyung tells a falsehood about being attacked by a group of opportunistic street gangsters without realizing who they are. He brought him to a random park after his father asked to be taken to the scene of the incident, but since his father is an elite prosecutor, he quickly realized that the entire story was a lie. Sekyung becomes frightened and suddenly experiences dizziness, causing him to fall to the ground. His father then admits him to the hospital. Kim tightens security around his house in the meantime and makes an effort to get in touch with his father's mistress, Mikyung, who is the source of all of this, but he is unable to do so. While Mistress Mikyung is frustrated that the gangsters weren't able to abduct a mere woman. When Kim finds out that Jaemin is missing from school the next day, he asks his friend to inform Jaemin to meet with him the next day. In addition, one of his new friends invites him to go out with them to a sick cafe so they can have a good time. Kim notices that Sekyung is also missing and gets worried. So he starts chatting with him and gets to know he is currently at the library near his house. When he returns back home and meets with Sekyung, they study together for a bit, and then have a brief conversation with each other. Meanwhile, Sekyung's father starts investigating the profile of Songyi since he's worried about his son. Kim, in the meantime, is trying to teach Sekyung how to fight so that he can protect himself in the event that they encounter the gangsters once more. Upon returning home, they meet with Jaemin, so they go to a cafe. Kim brings something to drink for them. Worried, Jaemin asks about the recent incident that happened at his house and gets to know that Kim has cancelled the police complaint. When Kim gets to know that Jaemin has been starving for 2 days, he takes him to his house to feed him. Furthermore, Jaemin asks Kim to let him stay overnight because his house is too big, explaining that he feels lonely and has no one to stay with him at home. When Kim allows him to stay over, Sekyung also decides to stay for the night. Upon their reunion at midnight, Jaemin immediately adopts an act of best friendliness, asking to be allowed to stay at his house for a few more days. However, Kim finds it difficult to accept him as a friend because he has been bullying him for months and has even shared his videos on social media. However, Jaemin begins to act like he owes him something and becomes irate when he denies him permission to stay. When Jaemin meets with Sekyung, Sekyung calls him shameless for asking Songyi for help even after trying to kidnap his mother. But he refuses to believe that Sekyung really saw him. However, he is sure about it, and Kim also gets to know about it and asks to reveal the location of those perpetrators. The following day after school, he tells his driver to go home without him and take care of everyone since he has an appointment. However, as he is waiting for the cab, 2 men unexpectedly appear behind him, and they abduct him. Nevertheless, he does not lose his calmness and starts to count the number of people. When an adult steps inside the room, Kim instantly realizes that he is his old friend, Dong-soo, and he quickly stands up with a confident demeanor, looking him in the eye. Like the video for part 2 and subscribe for more videos like this. We'll meet again in the next video.